Sanctify
What's going
Yo,
on?
yo,
you holy.
how you doing?
I'm doing well. I feel like this is such a long time coming.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've been like keeping an eye on everything you've been doing for a minute since maybe I feel like 2017 or 20 around. I feel like it was around 2017, 2018, but I might be wrong. Um,
It's I've been at this for a while. Let's
yeah.
just say that. Same here, though. I mean, I love the last. I honestly one of the the inspirations for me was Black Radical Imagination.
Oh,
I
word.
think once I saw one,
Yo. That's
I
so cool.
saw I saw the first program they did. Oh, I guess like maybe like their third
Yeah.
year in, and I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I need to do this.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yo, shout out to Aaron. Shout out to Amir. I think I mentioned Aaron to someone yesterday. Just like I had a moment, I was like, oh man, my heart kind of swelled just as Black Radical Imagination, doing that with Janelle, Aaron, Amir, like that's very important to me. It was like a real special place in my heart. Just not, I mean, we would attend them too, right? Like like, they were super important for us. So then the fact to be able to kind of travel with them as well and kind of be a part of it, like, yeah, that was clutch.
That was definitely the first time I saw anyone moving around with as a black curator,
Yeah.
curator at that, moving around with films, and it was like just new shorts and
Hmm.
just beautiful works that really expanded the spectrum.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think for me too, right? Like being able to kind of see films in that vein, that's kind of like in grad school, that's kind of the stuff we were into, Janelle, myself, other peers and like friends. We were kind of into like Black avant-garde or just doing innovative stuff historically, but also in the present moment. I think Black radical imagination served like as kind of a touchstone for a lot of us. Like that was a place where we could go to like check out stuff by, from Jatavia to Ephraim to, the list goes on, right? And kind of one get hip to the work and get hip to kind of what they were doing in the different modes of expression, like it was the possibilities to kind of see that and see the filmmakers like stretch was super inspiring, and also the curation of it as well, like, oh, like these, like this is traveling internationally,
Hmm.
you know. So in the spaces that it touched too, for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, the community as well. I mean, you mentioned Chavia, and the first time I saw her work was through a Black Radical Imagination
Hmm.
screening,
Same.
and I was really just and totally blown away. And I had to have it for my next screening,
Yeah.
of
Yep.
course.
Yep.
And it formed a friendship,
Yeah.
So
That's it.
just and then you get to see people sort of on the rise from that. I think that's definitely where I first came to know you, and then really seeing you expand as a filmmaker has been just absolutely delightful.
I
It's
see.
You never know where some take someone. You just kind of have to stay connected.
Yeah. No, it was extremely inspiring. I feel like a lot of my formative relationships, or the relationships that kind of I have now, started then, right? I could think back to like maybe us showing maybe Jen and Kuru's work, right? And then like having the opportunity to one get to know her, but then also collaborate with her on like future projects and have relationships with a lot of the other filmmakers, as well. So it's kind of been like it's been a beautiful journey. I always have, it feels like I lived multiple lives. Like that was like grad school, which led to like film programming, to actually like creative research and writing for a lot of filmmakers and projects and editing, and then transitioning to kind of my own work.
Well, thanks for
Yeah.
taking us into the trajectory of your career so
Oh, that,
quickly.
yeah, that was
It
just
seemed like it
organic too.
happened overnight, but honestly, like you definitely put in a lot of work, and
Yeah.
I think that's also expressed in the beauty of your films too. So as the folks are still kind of rolling in, I guess I'll just take a moment, quickly introduce myself. My name is Melissa Lyde, and I'm the founder of Alfreda Cinema. And I'm so pleased to be joined with the filmmaker Darol Kae, and who has recently released the film Keeping Time, which will be screening tomorrow in our program at BAM, called Most Powerful, A Message to the Black Man, which explores divinity, the divine masculine, actually in poetic cinema. So happy to be able to include your work, Darol. And thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. It's an honor.
Well, thanks for saying
I
that.
mean it.
Live is something that is still pretty new to me. So even though I did do a couple a while back, but as I was trying to log in, I just realized, oh, I totally forgot. So.
Yeah. Listen, I'm older too, so I ain't even tripping because I'm like, how do I figure it? But for me,
There
I
was
just want
some
to have
new
a conversation.
There were some new questions they asked, but just to let the audience know, we probably won't get to your questions, but we'll just chat for a bit. Um, in preparation for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Darol is based in LA, so fortunately he won't be here for his theatrical premiere.
Yeah.
This is the theatrical premiere, right?
Yeah. I'm overdue. I need to be in New York. It's kind of embarrassing at this point, but I've never been. I've only been upstate, and my New York homies don't allow me to say that I've been in New York.
Well, honestly, I've never been to California.
Okay. Yeah, bet. There we go.
Don't worry, it's okay. It happens.
Yeah.
I think as a Black person on such opposite coasts that are so dynamic, it's eventually hard to meet at some point or get to the other side if it's not professional or some sort of leisure calling.
Yeah. I feel like it's going to happen. It's just a matter of I've been kind of so locked in with these projects, and if it's not happening organically, I kind of just don't like force it to happen. So
I definitely don't want to force coming to California myself as a tried and true Brooklynite.
Right.
I guess you just hear about a lot of things over on the coast,
Yeah.
but it's funny because one of my favorite themes, especially in Black film, is LA, Black life in LA. I think it's one of the most beautiful, if not, just serene aesthetics. Speaking to Jamal Fanaka's MMA, like favorite line, say that's not one of my favorite LA films.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting to me. A lot of what I'm doing is kind of related to like Black LA, you know what I mean? And also kind of, but like people have different ideas when they say LA too. Like I'm from South Central, Watts, Compton, like that part of LA, and oftentimes folks already have like this idea of what that means. Let alone like its proximity to Hollywood, its proximity to the entertainment industry, right? So for me, I'm kind of very much interested in like poor, like working class folks, and just like the signs and contradictions that come along with saying like Los Angeles, and it's so vast. Just to say that, like I grew up in Watts, Compton, all these areas, but I never went to like parts on the West Side, till I was an adult. Like I didn't even know, certain areas, and so yeah, I'm very sometimes
like
you gotta
Beverly Hills, Echo Park, like
yeah. I mean, Beverly Hills was just like a film. You know what I mean? It wasn't. I didn't even know Echo Park existed until I was like 20 something. I feel like sometimes you gotta leave a place to come back to it, and I think coming back now, I was reinvigorated in my like early 20s to come back and actually like see the place that kind of nurtured me. You know what I mean? I think sometimes we get too close to things and we assume we know them without studying, much like ourselves too. In Black culture, we feel, oh, we're Black, we know enough, and we don't do that work to study, to kind of really look intimately, to look closely. So I would like to think a lot of what I'm trying to do is about looking closely and being intimate, with those people, the places nearest to me.
That's beautiful. You just got off of set, truthfully.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're tired, but thank you still. You took time to, have this chat with us today.
No, it's a pleasure.
Can you kind of tell us a little bit about that new project?
Yo, I just got some of the footage back.
How's it look?
Crazy.
And this
Shout out.
A
Shout out
short
to
film, right?
yeah, this is a short film called Blur. Um, yeah, Tahila, my DP, phenomenal job. I'm still like on a high from that. I don't want to say too much about it, but it's kind of, what I ran from it. That was kind of me meditating on like my children and my father, and kind of thinking with that, keeping time is the community. I went to Jefferson High School, the same high school that Horace Tapscott was from. Samuel Brown taught at, so it was kind of about L.A. South Central. Um, and Blurs also it starts with a meditation, kind of in conversation with my
Mm.
mother and my uncle, um, and their experience together. It's just, for me, it's a film about touch. It's about care, and it's about love. And I feel like a lot of my films that could be like applied
I,
to it.
I feel like a lot of your films are about love.
Hmm.
And it of course hasn't, it is today is the day of
Right.
love. Happy Valentine's Day.
Right.
We obviously have nothing better to do, but
Yeah. Listen,
that I
I'm
mean,
here
I
for it.
love cinema.
I'm
So
here
cinema
for
is
it.
the love language.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I hear Holly Green in the back of my head too, right? Just talking about like how he doesn't romanticize the medium, right? And for me, I like that tension, right? It's this the medium. They're very like there are things that I want to do with the medium. I'm super interested in interrogating the medium to the fullest extent. I'm curious about its potential to express or to be a vehicle for Black expressivity. I also know the medium is not, you know, capable of telling like our fullness, the full complexity of Black lives as well. So I hold it accountable in that way, and I interrogate it to its fullness. But there is, an investment. There's something about kind of the form that I am trying to think with and think through, But then I'm also interested in books. I'm also interested in like forms of art that I think cinema can't do as well. You know what I mean? And collaging and putting that all in conversation, and the more I engage with things, it's kind of about creating a body of work or creating bodies of work. Um, yeah, I think I just wanted to say that too, just because I do have an affinity. There's an affinity for the medium, but then there's also a precise interrogation of its form, of its history, of its techniques um, that I want to continue to explore.
Mm. You did well, as someone who is a lover of poetic cinema, and that definitely looks like a experimental or
Mm-hmm.
avant-garde, but there is this implied verbiage where you are kind of. I know you said you don't believe in romanticizing the lens, but there is this sort of rhythm to it, and it does feel
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
poetry. Is that something you would describe yourself as, or the work that you've done on the long scope of things?
Yeah, I mean, I love I love poetry because it's tapped into intuition, right? And I think my mode of making, I would like to believe that it's more connected not to a technique, but more to a feeling. It's more connected to communicating a feeling more than communicating a narrative, like an arc, like a this thing happens and this thing happens, like plot points, right? And for me, yeah, that's connected to the poetic, right? Where maybe an image stands in or represents the totality of the film. Um, and yeah, I don't, but I also don't throw away the other tools. I think I'm exploring more with narrative form and how to kind of rupture that, how to use it, when to lean into poetic and when to lean into, kind of more traditional forms of storytelling, when to use the documentary storytelling elements. I think it's all useful. It's kind of about our implementation, right? Like I'm definitely not throwing away tools for the sake of throwing away tools. I think for me, I'm using things when most like when they best serve kind of what we're trying to communicate in the um, or kind of what atmosphere we're trying to create for the viewer and listener.
Well, that's one of the things that I love so much about keeping time. because it harnesses so many different
Mm-hmm.
layers and techniques in cinema. I mean, it sometimes it feels like scripted, sometimes it feels like documentary, and it really just it gives you, it's such a
Mm-hmm.
feast, and it also
I like
feels
that.
so authentic just in general. And it feels like such an intimate and loving capture of the Pan African People's Orchestra, who actually had their premiere performance here in
Yeah,
New York
yeah,
not too long ago. Shout out to Black Science Fiction,
yeah,
Amon
yeah. And
Emerson.
yeah,
They brought them out, and it was such an incredible experience to be with them and to replicate that same similar feeling
right,
of avant-garde jazz,
right.
but also feels like avant-garde
Mm-hmm.
filmmaking really beautifully tells their story.
I mean, that was historic. I think that was the first time the Pan African People's Orchestra, as a group, as a band, traveled to New York. Because I believe in the past, it's been kind of Horace and maybe a few other folks, but never kind of the band, right? So I don't even know, like, that was like for me at least, I knew like the gravity of like what that was, and the fact that that could happen, that means so much to me, just for the like who the Pan African People's Orchestra, who they are, but also what they represent. And for that to happen, that was big. That was really big. And I mean, I think avant-garde jazz has always kind of had this relationship, like with film and us maybe thinking about the possibilities that the medium can have. I think a lot of people have like talked about it in the sense of trying to push kind of film to do the things that music kind of has done, for decades, for generations. Um, but yeah, I think that project came about. I feel like it came out of like maybe a place of it's funny because it is like a love letter in that way, but it did come out of a place of like anger, and not towards anyone, but more so towards like me just not knowing about the band. Like I grew up and went to the same high school as Horace Tapscott, and I never heard Horace's name until I was an adult. Like all this history, this is my and the band would tell you like this is your history, this is your band, like, and I didn't know this until I was 20
Well,
something. You know what I mean?
I think something that is also a revelation is LA's or um, really LA's influence in jazz in general.
Yeah,
Um,
talk about it.
it's a wonderful film, that I definitely think about a lot is Bird by Clint
Hmm.
Eastwood. I'm only referencing it because it recently came on TCM, and
Right,
I'm a big nerd, but
right.
I love Charlie Parker, as I'm
Yeah.
sure everyone else. But what I love the most about that film is that it showed him traveling with Dizzy Gillespie to LA and showing a little bit of LA's jazz scene. And then you also have the phenomenal, I can't not
Hmm.
mention her, Patrice
Yeah.
Rushen, you know,
Yeah.
who
Absolutely.
in my opinion, like if Patrice sees this, if you know her, tell
Shout out to Patrice.
tell her to come to New York because
Yeah.
we love her. We want her
Yeah.
here.
She's a star.
Right. And then, a beautiful exhibit actually out right now by Colleen Smith,
Hmm.
which is the Wanda Coleman Sloan book.
Hmm.
So we're getting a lot of LA visuals here this season. And I
Yeah.
definitely recommend anyone go to that exhibit. Is by far my favorite experience
Yeah.
right now in New York. But I just love this look at the city in a different way where we haven't
Hmm.
seen it before.
Yeah.
Um,
It came after also Barbara McCullough's a musical griot, her film, her film on Horace Tapscott, and it was like a bunch of other documentaries that were out like on the band.
mhm.
And for me, I think the film is an intervention into the form. Like most jazz films are kind of documentaries or they're narratives about kind of like um, how the artist's creativity is kind of linked to drugs or any other type. I feel like that's in Bird too, in Eastwood's Bird, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And for me, with Keeping Time, it was about because in LA, like, it wasn't, you don't come to LA to be like a jazz musician, right? Like that's not the route. But these cats are like here and they're making music. And I had like this moment just like listening, reading Horace's autobiography, read everything that Steve already wrote on the band, talking with Michaela Session. But it's just like, yo, like they're doing this not for like the event to perform. Like they're really playing this to come together, right? Like it was like this continuity thing that was happening that I was really interested in. I thought we could tell that in an interesting way, you know, where we were kind of blurring the line between documentary, and the script was kind of something that happened organically, but I wrote it, and then I wrote it with the band, right? Like, so I would meet with Michaela, and kind of I put it together through like knowing their history and listening to him, and then I would sit with him and go over his lines, and we would put it like in his voice. Uh, with Fundi, one of the elder members in the band, same process. Sister Maia, same process, right? So it's kind of, and then that's like a skeleton for actually when we showed up the days we were filming, right? We knew the emotional beats, we kind of knew what was happening, but also that was just a framework, and we kind of pushed it to the side. And you know, a lot of those lines were said, but it was also free too. I think we just prepared so that we could kind of get into it and then kind of know where we needed to go and find it in their own way, in their own language too.
And what's so, also captivating is that we get to see what feels like generational work,
Mm-hmm.
being passed
Yep.
down from the son to the
Yeah.
father, the band leader, and then him taking on the hardships of running
Yeah.
a band,
Yeah.
leading a
Yep.
full
It's
time
crazy.
band. So, and I think especially as millennials are, really starting to stand on their own and taking their place in society as not just as um the bridge bearers, but even so pioneers, and
Mm-hmm.
reshaping society the way that we feel
Yeah.
comfortable with it. Um,
Yeah.
Kind of
Absolutely.
talk to that sort of uh, arc in the film and why it was so important to, portray this particular plot, at least
Yeah.
plot point.
Yeah. No, I mean intergenerational tension is real, right? And I feel like we don't I don't see it enough, so I was like that's something I'm very curious about. Especially I feel like the band was just like a microcosm of like the world too, right? You know, oftentimes like, oh, it's a music film, but it's like really they're just like there's like a seed, there's like a secret in what they're doing that might be useful for us to pay attention to see how we're better engaging with those around us in our community, our family, older folks, younger folks. Like I feel like for me, just kind of like peeping that, and um, I think I was reading a lot of Kevin Young too at the time around tradition, right? Like tradition isn't just like you have to claim it. You have to claim like this is my tradition. Like traditions get like kind of left behind, lost, and so it was thinking about this young musician, 20, and this is a lot of it's kind of you know the actual narrative where it's like he's 24, 25 at the time. He didn't ask for it. I think, Mickey, um, he was having like his recital or like his graduation and from Cal Arts, I believe. And he was like, oh, wait, bet. He's been playing with the band since he was 9. Like, he was like, oh, I'm going to invite the band to my recital. No one else could do this. And they performed. And then they got another gig at like Zebulon like some months later. Then another gig. And after a while, they were like, you're the band leader. And it was like, and even that's contentious, right? It's like, well, what is that? He was still trying to find his voice and do his own thing, but then also he knows the history and the significance, of kind of this where he stands. So he takes it very seriously too, right? And he's at that fork in the road, and I thought that was a beautiful kind of thing to highlight because I feel like we're all in that place too, where we're at this juncture where we have to choose like who are we going to be, like what traditions are we going to claim, what traditions are we going to left or going to leave behind, and how are we going to navigate relationship. It's messy, like it's not all like romantic and like just it's not easy, right? Like he's 25, 26, and now he's responsible for negotiating deals with like in people who are twice his age are in some ways dependent on him in terms of like the financial responsibility that comes with that, making sure folks are showing up for rehearsal. And this is like a all day, you got to live this, you know what I
I
mean? And so,
the way that I connected with that was like eerie, only
yeah.
because I'm also in a space where, I'm working with my elders to
Hmm.
present their work,
Yep.
and I'm often the adult in the room, really just on top of folks trying to get
Hmm.
these films
Right.
wrangled. Like, it's not easy
Right.
work.
I'm already knowing. Yep.
Yes, you for
Yep.
sure, you know what it is. So and then also to be someone who is looked at as an expert in the
Hmm.
craft as well,
Yeah.
where you very much had to learn in life. um,
Yeah.
and people don't really think so. It's funny how we have this overarching sort of idea to go to college and to
Hmm.
get all these diplomas and da 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 da, but so many occupations are learned through life
Hmm.
experiences, and that's certainly the case as a musician. I
Yeah.
mean, of course people go to school, but you know
Yeah.
either you got it or you don't got it,
Yeah. I love some of the music. I feel like, and I might get it wrong, but I believe it was I think Horace called it Sidewalk University, or it might
Mm-hmm.
have been Kamal Daoud. But it's it's that idea that you come together and that learning happens. That's study. That's black study.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming together and collectively coexisting. And we say that, but it's not easy. Like there's a lot of like learning that happens in that space. There's a lot of like figuring it out. Like we're figuring it out
I
perpetually.
definitely
You know what I mean?
call it the school of
Yeah,
hard knocks. Oh,
yeah, for sure, for sure.
something that
And there's a
also,
lot at stake. There's a lot at stake too.
especially as a black artist,
Hmm.
where we're continuously fighting for our livelihoods and fighting to stay pure to the art.
Right.
Where so many black artists often have to give up their dreams in order to earn a living. And
Hmm.
that's also sad to kind of have to, live with, especially in a space of black music where, we've seen it historically just been
Hmm.
dismantled by, I think, the white music, the white music industry,
Yep.
or I should say, white led and corporate led music industry. So
Right.
this film really came in such a tender
Yeah.
time where I think we're looking at this very visible shift
Hmm.
from where the new music is kind of being supported and coming
Yeah.
out of, and it's very clear, in my opinion, that it's coming from
Yeah.
London. Um, I mean, there's very little encouragement for young black artists who aren't in this, who aren't a part of mainstream
Hmm.
music, the mainstream music
Yeah.
culture, to be able to learn how to play an instrument and to really grow in that. So this film just felt so timely
Oh,
to speak to kind of that. Is that something that you felt that was that something that kind of came out of it organically, or was that a conscious effort to sort of also paint?
I think maybe, I think organically, but also once I kind of got my antennas up around that, I wanted to hone in on it. I think that they're doing something incredible, and they've been doing something incredible in that space, and thinking about the space of the garage. Like it's incredibly like punk, right? Within like jazz is punk, right? Before it was, you even like a word like Horace was meeting. They were meeting out of homes and garages for decades, and just making the music and sharing it directly with the community. And I feel like the fact that they've been able to carve out that space, I'm very interested and invested in how they've been able to sustain that. And they're not the only ones. I mean, even with Blur recently, like we were able to kind of we filmed at this home, and I believe they run this program. It's called Black House Radio, and I'm just interested in how folks are cultivating spaces, where you wouldn't think these opportunities to kind of grow musically and come together collectively, they aren't kind of encouraged. But despite that, like that's still what happens. And I feel like we're keeping time I found out very early on. I got hip to Horace, and I found out they were still actively. Yeah, shout out to Black House Radio. I found out they were still actively engaged, like in the band, like the arc was still performing. I want to figure out like how were they sustaining themselves, right? And I think that kind of um, shaped a lot of the script. It shaped a lot of kind of what I thought was happening in the band. And you would hear him talk about it too, like with the documentary. You would hear Mickey talk about it, and I think that became like a focal point for the film for sure. Just these, and you know, it ends. It starts and it ends at the garage. You know what I mean? Like it's, and for me, the garage is a symbol of the community, right? The garage isn't, you know, the backstage area, you know, in like a club. It's not like this the recording studio. For me, that's like a symbol of LA's jazz. That's like a icon of LA jazz, right? Where it's connected to the home, it's connected to the community, and I kind of felt that that space carried a certain energy that I think the film was wanted to get close to and approximate as best we could.
Well, I'd love for you to, talk about some of your directorial techniques and approaches, just because it feels so unique to who you are,
Mm.
and I'm sure a lot of our audience would love to hear you sort of just speak to, what lighting choices you decided to use, or even, switching between. It seems like you use both digital and
Yeah,
film.
yeah,
I mean, what's the importance with harnessing both of those formats and mediums, and then just kind of blending it like
yeah.
jazz itself?
Yeah, I mean that's what it was, right? I think one of the at the outset I wanted the film to be as innovative and multi-directional as the band. You know, I think so that was kind of my guidepost. And thinking about what we're doing in the film, how we're in the present, but then also like you know the band, Mickey, and everyone carries the past with them, right? They speak about Horace and his values and him as a person, like they were just with him, right? And I believe that that's like natural and that's kind of how we operate, right? Where we, you know, kind of cut against that binary of like past, present, future, right? For us, I wanted that space to kind of coexist and exist on the same plane. And I think we kind of used a little bit of that in the film where we would play with kind of like 16 mil was we used, so we shot on 16 millimeter and 35 um, with archival footage and some, excuse me, and some digital footage as well. But the 16 was present day stuff with Mickey and the band. You know, the 35 for me was for like the historical vignettes that we created
Hmm.
with the wonderful Nia Andrews, who's like LA royalty when we're talking about like jazz.
Shout out to
But
Nia, because she actually purchased a shirt.
hey, no, we love Nia, 150%. But yeah, I feel like 16 mil was kind of me thinking about, you know, thinking about documentary, thinking about kind of the present tense, and then 35. I wanted the historical vignettes to feel like they were like pieces of film that we found, right? In my mind. It's like the jazz film that should have been made that never got made. We created our own archive in a
Hmm.
sense, and then utilized that archive and kind of spliced it with the the only. I feel like folks expect archival like footage from me, and so with keeping time, we tried to kind of tame it a bit, and we only used one source of archival footage, and it was great graciously kind of given to us from the Horace Tapscott family, and it was one of his home movies. And so all the footage that you see that's like historical footage, archival footage, is from Horace Tapscott's own home movie collection. It's one video. It's like the only known, to my knowledge, the only known footage of the band performing at South Park, and then Horace with his family and just like traveling. Um, and so, yeah, it was just important for me to maybe just think about kind of past and present. And we tried to do that with kind of the format. And probably most importantly, sound, though, too. I think sound is extremely important to me. And so, working with, you know, archival like sound clips from Horace, but then working with James William Blades as well. And I believe it was the first time James got to record like with the band itself. So he was actually in LA, and we brought members of the Ark to the recording studio where they kind of laid down kind of the music that became the score and the soundscape. Um, but I think sound and a lot of that's like oral history. Like not enough of the importance of oral history gets made in jazz or in Black culture in general. So a lot of what you hear, like I was lucky enough to go sit down and talk with Ross Poet Ojinki, who's like he's been rooted in LA, rooted in the scene out here for decades, and he kind of blessed us with just, and it was through brother JJ, who appears in the film as well, who's the brother sitting on the couch next to Michael Sessions, Mickey's father, who kind of I just drove around with him, and he kind of opened that up and brought me to people, and I wouldn't be able to like have conversations with, and it's kind of about like wanting to integrate the oral tradition, not just in the film, like conversational, but also into like the fabric of the sound that you hear. So I think that was super, super kind of motivated and directed from the outset.
Mm. I would, and for me, what was so also as captivating was the color and the
Yeah,
coloring.
yeah.
But I just love these hues the range of hues that you go into with the film, and it really does make it feel so melancholy. I
Hmm.
think just overall,
Yeah,
such a
you.
beautiful
That
approach.
Thank you. That's our DP, um, Andrew Trong, and our colorist, Kaya Lu, um, who are phenomenal. Um, and yeah, it was just, I mean, it's all play. Like, I think the band set the stage for us to do and challenge ourselves as much and creatively as much as kind of they did musically, right? So at every stage, that's what our intention was, right? Whether it's in all of our collaborators were super patient. I think we've been bubbling in the film. I have been, before I even brought the film to the band, I kind of wanted to set a stage for, opportunities that we could, kind of, oftentimes it's one directional. Someone comes to the a band and they just want to like extract, super extractive. Let me just make this film about you and then take it and run. So that was the last thing that I wanted to do. So I kind of had a game plan before I even brought the film to them. Like, okay, maybe we could do one of the things that we're doing right now is we're making a book about the 60+ year visual history of the Pan African People's Orchestra. So that was one of the ideas that I brought to them. Like it's not just about me kind of coming to you with this film idea, but also building on their emphasis on preservation, cultural preservation. I kind of threw out an idea of let's make a book that kind of preserves the history, but also treats it um, in a very creative and dynamic way. Um, and I just went to rehearsals a lot too for maybe several months, but without any film equipment, without any recording devices, just me. Sometimes with maybe Andrew, my DP, but I'm just like kicking it in the back, just like meeting everyone, going to shows, just being in the cut. Until one day they just invite me. They called me like to the front of the garage to kind of like, yo, like Mickey was like, this is Darol. He wants to make a film, and I had to like share my idea with them while folks are like looking. Some are like receptive, some are just like who is like, oh, we got another one trying to come. But I think being from the city, being there and being present, I think that's the first step was just being present, for the time without kind of putting any demands on them meant a lot. And I think that's eventually how the film got
You
made.
know, I don't think enough people realize the importance of telling a story that feels like you're recalling your childhood almost. That
Mm-hmm.
I think filmmakers, at least from what I've experienced, really want to be an outsider to a story and don't seem
Mm-hmm.
to give it enough, or don't seem to look within,
Right.
to tell the story. And this felt like a film that where you really wanted to have some curiosity, or at least this has affected you over time,
Yeah.
and then captured it, because of your inner curiosity. It really just felt like we were going through, your own personal interest in this group. And we all got to experience their present existence and history unfold in such a beautiful way.
Yeah.
Is that,
Thank you.
something that you, um, I mean, obviously, you've made films about your family, so you definitely use your own personal interests in life to with the camera as
Mm-hmm.
well. Is that something that is a resource that kind of keeps on giving for you?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we have to like why tell a story if you're not going to tell it from your unique like perspective too, right? And I identify with all of them. Like I identify with Maya, I identify with Michael, with Mickey, like all these unique perspectives. So, um, yeah, I mean, I don't know another way to tell a story than to tell it like wholly from a place of like, and it's not just myself, right? I think I enter the story through like kind of my own outlook, but I think what Keeping Time was trying to do was trying to inhabit, kind of that tension between past and present and future, and I identify with, you know, multiple people and their perspectives, right? And I wanted to the treatment of that material to be honest, and I think that's always what I strive for is kind of the treatment, whether which scenario it is, to be honest, and hopefully that's kind of coming across in the work, and that's the stuff that's being felt. And it's rooted, and it's not just me, it's me talking with Mickey, and it being informed by Mickey, it being informed by Fundi, it being informed by Maia, it being informed by Michael's session, like Horace, listening to Horace countless you know archival like clips. And I think I try to become a very astute observer, um, to the constellation of lives that are happening simultaneously, and to kind of insert myself or to be present and float between them. Um, and I think having Horace's voice, having building these relationships to where we're able to kind of get access to Horace's film material, to Roberto Miranda lended us a beautiful conversation that he had with Horace. So like the film wouldn't feel like it feels without the relationships that we were given access to incredible material. And I think it's because I think we made it a point to connect the way that we connected, and folks knew the importance of like telling the story, and we tried to and we all Keeping Time is a small page in like this beautiful unfolding story that's still going on now. Like they're still making beautiful. They just had a beautiful collaboration. My homie Cleon directed a beautiful collaboration that they did with Denim Tears. Like I'm super excited as a fan of the art for what they have in store next too.
Mm. Well, the overall structure or theme for our program tomorrow night, hopefully y'all can come out. Is, as I had mentioned before, kind of speaks to divine masculinity
Mm-hmm.
and male masculine filmmakers kind of living in their purpose, especially as I think this idea of masculinity that we have been sold,
Mm-hmm.
as a larger society, has felt sort of crippling. But the importance of really expressing uh, masculinity in a healthy
Mm-hmm.
way, a healthy way of how to at least just maneuver through these outlets
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
It was really important for me to pinpoint filmmakers who felt like they were just in their purpose as what they're meant to be and what they're meant to be doing.
All right.
Do you kind of feel like this is something that we need to kind of have a conversation about? I think just in general amongst our community, where masculinity sort of needs to be reshaped or I guess just taken stock of.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we need to have a lot of conversations. Yeah, masculinity being one, for sure. And but yeah, I mean, I think it's just like I'm
I
thinking of,
guess I asked that too
yeah,
because I have to say, and from my from an outsider's opinion,
hmm
it does feel like you and your work is sort of leading this next generation of filmmakers, through this territory of sort of dismantling, mainstream storytelling, and the acceptability there, and it seems like you're for sure encouraging others through your own work to push the frame further than what we've seen before. So I guess that's
yeah,
kind of why I put
that's,
you in the hot
yeah,
seat
it's okay.
today, because I'm not gonna lie, you're and it you deserve these accolades. Truthfully, that's why I think I see your work as in such a respectable light, and I think that's why a lot of people do support you as well. But I think overall there does need to be a deeper, conversation
Hmm.
again on like where our responsibility is.
Yeah.
I think as a community, and how we can encourage um, men, people who identify as well in this space, how we can encourage them to live in their purpose.
Yeah, no, no, thank you. I mean, I'm figuring this shit out, right? And it's you know what I mean. And there's like this level of self critique too that is always happening, and I'm always trying to push that as well. And I think what you see maybe in the films is the back end of that. You know what I mean? Like working through certain issues, and if I'm bringing it back to like masculinity, it's like I've had to like reshift, and this is maybe a while back, but several years like reshifting like vulnerability as a strength. You know what I mean? And like kind of finding kind of the purpose in the personal,
Mhm.
but then also at the same time going beyond the autobiographical and maybe hoping that something universal in a sense of like it stretches beyond just myself, and a lot of this comes from like my background, just like rigorous study and like thinking and doing a bunch of reading and stuff like that and finding a way like I just couldn't write it. I couldn't write these papers. I was like in grad school. I couldn't write these 20-page papers the way that everybody else could. And I think this is kind of the expressive lane for me. And like we take in so much information and experiences, and then so much reflection and introspection. It's like, what do we do with that? You know what I mean? And it wasn't healthy for me to hold on to it, and I know the stories that I want to tell, and it's about balance too. Like I know what's out there. I know I ain't trying to do this, that, and the third. I know what does sustain me. I know what are the questions that are like fueling kind of my investigations. And I just try to lean into that. And like some of that is just, it is like maybe thinking I would, if someone does get something out of that in terms of like reframing masculinity and like reworking it. Like I'm trying to rework this shit every day. You know what I mean? I'm trying to unlearn the shit that has been handed down to me every day. You know, whether we're thinking about like violence, whether we're thinking about like patriarchy, um, this, that, and the third. You know what I mean? And so I think I'm very open. I'm open to um, kind of that breaking open process. And I just like I lean into that, and I think the work is connected to it in certain respects, whether it be something deeply personal, like I ran from it, but then keeping time is something that's deeply personal as well. You know what I mean? I think it deals with another side, another part of me, which maybe is connected to the individual versus the community. And ideas about like you said, like what is there's certain things about like Michaela that I admire too, and like to be in that position, mid 20s, to take on that responsibility. I don't think a lot of us would do that. You know what I mean? Like I don't think a lot of us would be in that same position and be like, I bet I got it, I got us. You know what I mean? We might be super invested just in our individual selves in that moment and disregard. you know, the whole 40, 50-year history up to that point, um, and just brush it off, you know. And I think him decided not to do that, um, even though it is challenging. Like it's a beautiful thing, you know. And I have a great amount of admiration and respect for him, and not just him, the people that help him. Because it's not, that's the thing too. It's not just him. He has like homies that are like right there with him in the mud, you know, making sure that everyone stays sharp, and they're his age. You know what I mean? Women, men. Then we have, you know, the elders. There's certain elders who are like the mediators. It's like a whole network that's going on. You know what I mean? And so I think a lot of maybe the films of that is like I see myself in them, but I also deeply admire or relate to the challenges and the hurdles and like the connection that happens, or like the raw emotional situations that we find ourselves in, or like the deeply like spiritual connection between past and present. There's always like a nugget in there, and then I try to just be guided. I try to be guided by what the film, you know, what what it wants to be too. So it's always like doing both things at the same time, and like the depth of the ego too. I feel like that's a big part of it. Like, you know, I love collaborating. I love working with folks and being a part of a creative fellowship. And I feel like I'm at my best when I'm in those spaces. And I guess I think more so the hurdle is like trying to be that in life. You know, it's kind of like this Pharoah Sanders quote, and where he was like uh, I'm trying to be the things that I play about. I'm trying to live out the principles that I play about. You know what I mean? Like freedom, love, um, community. Like I'm trying to be that person. The things that I'm making films about, I'm trying to be that person all the time, and it's hard. But
And
that's what I strive for.
that's beautiful to hear. I'm not even gonna lie. Well, thank you so much because I know Live likes to shut us
Yeah, yeah,
out, shut us
yeah, yeah.
down after
It's all
an
good.
hour. But thank you so much for spending this
Thank
time with me today,
you.
and with our audience. Again, come and join us tomorrow night at BAM at 7 o'clock for Most Powerful: A Message to the Black Man. Of course, featuring Darol Kae's Keeping Time, which will be the theatrical premiere of such a beautiful short film. And hopefully, you can revisit this conversation on our YouTube page. All right,
Thank you too. I appreciate you.
bye.
About how we young people never try to do nothing but use dope and kill each other up in the streets. Then when we try to do something the way they say it's supposed to be done, they mess with us and try to shut us down.